Welcome to the Heads and Volleys podcast with me, Lee Dunn. All right, here's a fun one for you. How do you greet and activate your players? And this question comes from something that I feel like I've just evolved over time, and part of it comes from becoming an educator for US soccer and educating on or the methodology of whole part whole or play practice play, and understanding that when the players are arriving and they're playing the game straight away, it's really valuable, it's exciting, it's engaging, it's kind of why they are there. It's all part of experiential learning and giving the players the opportunity to play the game more and more and more. But I then also have talked for a long time about individual points of contact with players, so getting to know players on a personal level and using the arrival activities as a method to do so. So I always said that there are multiple points of contact that I want with every player in every training session, and one or two of them is, of course, always a coaching point, the position, a scan, a touch, whatever that is, a moment of the game. But one of them is also always a personal connection. How is your dog? How is your family doing after you guys just moved house? You went on vacation. Did you have a great time? Where did you go? What was it like? What did you learn? All these things, kind of what's new at school. All of these ways that I'm trying to connect personally with players. I always give the same old story. I learned that one of my kids in a team that I coached a while ago was a chess champion. And it made so much sense for how he thought and how he explained and what he saw in the game and the way he moved and the way he kind of understood. No, he didn't just move diagonal or move on an L shape, but the way he kind of processed the game was relative to his understanding of the game of chess. And in my last episode, I talked about baseball with one of my players, but it made so much sense once I got to know him, and then I had a kind of means of connecting with him. So that's the first question for you. Before we kind of go into what I do or some examples of best practices, how do you activate and engage with your players at the start of practice? So as a valuable listener, you're probably wondering, well, what do you do? How do you do it? So with the young players that I have right now, they arrive, I have some form of activation for them. My first group that gets to training early now, I think by their own rule, they are arriving 15 minutes early and they're playing a game. They're making their own teams and away they go. Now, I'm then using that time to connect with them individually. Hey, dude, how was this? What was going on here? Tell me about this. Tell me about that. Whatever it is. And then after we played, or we're right around start time, this is a great thing that they're 15 minutes early. If the players aren't there 15 minutes early and that they're on time, on the hour, then that's fine too. There's no expectation that they need to be there early. But these kids are starting to bug their parents, and they're starting to say, I want to go, I want to go, I want to go. Everyone's going to be there. There's a game going on. And I see them walking across the parking lot, or I see them come into the building, and they're sprinting through, and they're disregarding everyone and everything else just to get on the field and play. And now that's a beautiful thing. And that's something that they have done themselves. I was turning up 10 minutes before training, or I hit traffic and I'm there right on time. And I get there and they're playing and they're having a great time. But if the players are arriving on the hour, then we'll always go for an extra 5 minutes and give them some playing time too. It's not their fault that they're not there early when everyone else is. And so I think about me as a kid. I used to go to school at 8 a.m. School didn't start till 9:05. I used to go there at 8 a.m. and we'd play football and soccer on the blacktop until it was time to start school. And we just noticed that we would get there earlier and earlier and earlier to play for more and more and more. And that is I love that for my players. I love that they are doing that. I love that their parents can get them there early enough to do it. But after the completion of the 5 minutes, I pull them together. And whilst they're kind of finishing out their game, I am moving and setting up things for whatever our practice structure looks like. And then I bring them together and I pull them together and I huddle them up. We all huddle up, arms around each other. And we have a conversation. Conversation isn't quite right, but I ask them for a reflection, whether that is a thumbs up or a thumbs down, or a two hands in if you really liked it, or one hand in, or no hands in if you didn't really like it. And the idea is it reflects on either the game that we had, if we haven't had, if this is our first training since the game, or if this is a training session, our second of the week, then I'll want to know what their overall feeling was around that training session. And then I'll use that to say, okay, you gave it a thumbs up. Why? You gave it a thumbs down, or you kept both arms out. That's okay. It's a safe space. You can tell me exactly what you feel, because that's going to help me help you. Then we put our chin on our chest, we close our eyes, and we take 3 deep breaths. And it's just a little centering idea around 3 deep breaths is a focus on those deep breaths. It's something that we're doing in unity. Now, of course, I've looked up and I see that some of them are staring into space, but the majority, every single time, have their eyes closed and are following in the steps of taking 3 deep breaths. And we talk about how we can kind of center ourselves, and those 3 deep breaths, when I first introduced them, was every deep breath is for a moment of focus. And so it's going to help us focus just a little bit more. Remember, these are young kids. They're excited. They want to get after the ball. They want to hustle. They don't necessarily understand the bigger picture of what we're doing, how it relates to the game and their overall development. And I don't think that they necessarily need to know that, but the capability of them, or their kind of coping mechanism, I guess is what I'm trying to say here, is like 3 deep breaths just help you achieve so much. And there's a lot done about breathing out there. So these 3 deep breaths, and I learned that from a coach I worked with a little while ago. I used to kind of like smirk at it. And now, having used it more and more and witnessed it more and more, I just see what it does for bringing these players together. So we take our 3 deep breaths, and now we're ready to practice. And this is what we're going to do. This is our focus for the day. This is where we're going with it. This is what you guys can expect. And then go get a water break. As you get a water break, then I give them instructions. You're going to get the balls. I'm going to meet me here. We'll be on the blue cones to start with. All of the balls will be right there. You 4 need to be in orange. You 4 need to be in green, whatever that is. And that's really the last kind of huddle that we do until we have our huddle at the end. So that, to me, is within the first 10 minutes, because they've been playing a game, we get our little huddle, we set a standard for training, and away we go. Remember, these are younger players that don't necessarily need to warm up per se. They're not needing to do dynamic stretches yet. We'll slowly add in these behavior aspects of our warm-ups and kind of our pre-games. But right now, it's about focusing mentally, because if you speak to, and this is another reason why, is when I run coaching education for US Soccer, and they say, I send the kids on 2 laps to burn some energy off or to help them calm down. Well, I found that we do a little huddle and we do a little team chat, and that suddenly makes everything so much better, makes everything so much easier, makes suddenly our players understand what they're there for and why they are involved, why they are doing what they are doing. And just that clarity is 1,000 times better than any laps of the field will ever do. So what do you do? How do you do a engagement, activation, kind of purposeful beginning with your players, and does it work? Think about some of the other examples that I've used out there with having a whiteboard or a tactics board, and the tactical board is on the side of the field, and it has kind of the activities and the expectations out there for the players. So when they arrive, they read it, they understand it, or at least they can get an idea of what we're doing. I've also done things where I send images or GIFs of the training session to the players prior, or to the parents prior. My problem is with the younger players, if you've listened to any of the recent episodes where I'm asking for things like the juggling record, what I'm asking the players to do isn't necessarily making it to the players, but instead the kind of hits the dead end of the parents who have got 1,000 things going on already, that they don't pass it on, they forgot about it, whatever's going on. So there are times where that doesn't necessarily work. So things like the whiteboard upon arrival or the huddle really, really work. So what do you do, and how often do you evaluate that? And I'll do this often where I get a feel for my players. Maybe they're in a crabby mood, and we had this just the other day where the conversation with one of the players was, hey, it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay that you've had a lot going on at school. You were stressed out by something, something bothered you, someone annoyed you, you got hurt at school. Maybe your mum yelled at you on the way home from school because you forgot something or you didn't do something right. There are 1,000 things that a kid experiences every day and is told or is reminded of by an adult. And so I think in my environment, I want it to be a comfortable environment that they feel safe, that they know that it is okay to have a bad day, and it's okay. Like if I have a bad day and I go to practice, I'm probably not everyone's favorite coach on that day. If I've had a good day, I probably show up differently. And just think about how, if you look at the players that you work with, sometimes you think, man, that kid was so different yesterday, for right, or not right or wrong, but differently, more positive, more negative, whatever it is. One of my players yesterday said he was just so grumpy and complaining at everyone and whining about everything. And instead of kind of telling him to suck it up and stop whining and stop being that player, the conversation instead turned to, okay, it's okay for you to have a bad day. How can I help you right now? Do you need to play as a +1 a little bit more? Do you need to go in goal? Do you need to be a striker? Or, whatever it is that, hey, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, I notice that something is different, and I'm telling you that's okay. Because at practice, if I'm having a bad day, no one's ever there to tell me it's okay. Imagine if your DOC came to the field anyway, LOL. But imagine if your DOC came to the field and said, all right, dude, you're having a bad day, that's fine. Let me help you, let me take over, let me do something, let me give you some time. Something that supports. Same thing with your significant other. If they have a bad day, you know it, and you're there to lighten the load or to support in any way you can. And this is basically the same thing. So I have my players to have a bad day, and I figure these things out through our activation, through our arrival, through our huddle, through our free play at the beginning, where I can just observe and get a feeling for our players. So reflect, how do you do it? What do you do with your players? How do you keep your eye on them? How do you read the situation? Do you expect everybody to conform in the same way, to your best player or to your favorite player? And then, is what you're doing servicing all of your players? And this is something that I still miss. I still manage to disregard players or create issues in terms of them not being able to fit in on that day because the demand is too high and they're just not in the mood for it. They didn't sleep well, whatever it is. And so consider, for your players, for your environment, what are you doing? How are you doing it? And is it working? Does it consistently work, or do you have to change it? And I think when we go into our training environments or even our game environments, because hopefully the game environment matches what our training environment is, nothing different per se, but the conversation with them is still the same. It's still the same space. It's still the same safe space for them to feel the love, for them to feel comfortable, for them to actually be who they are in that moment. And I think that's so powerful. So when we go with a purposeful kind of plan for our players being loved and being safe, I don't think we can beat how conscious we are in those first 5 or 10 minutes. Or if your players are showing up 15 minutes early, that kind of says everything you need to know too. Let me know what you do. I want to know. I'm always stealing ideas and claiming them for myself, but I will also give you props. So at Lead on Soccer, let me know.